I essentially lost 2 restaurants. I had 1 liquor license and food service license taken away from me. 10 other business owners. There was supposed to be 200 of us, and 190 of them decided that they were afraid of what was going to happen, and they decided to not open against the unlawful mandates. They're probably at about $2.2 million in revenue between the 2 of them to nothing. I was pretty much on my own. You know, I had a lot of support from local politicians and stuff like that. As far as state level, nobody would listen. I was speechless when Tim Walz got the vice president candidacy, honestly. He destroyed our lives. So we know who he is and we know what he is.
Joining me right now is Lisa Zarza, a business owner who has been personally afflicted by the anti-American governing policies of Tim Walz. She's here to share her story with all of us today. Lisa, thanks for being here. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
To begin, I'd like for you to tell our listeners why you, as a Minnesota resident, have to commute over 2 hours per day across state lines into Wisconsin to operate your business because of Tim Walz.
Well, I had 2 restaurants in Minnesota, and I was actually a business owner in Minnesota since about 2016. And in 2020, Tim Walz, along with the entire nation, shut our state down in March 17th of 2020. We were able to open about 2.5 months later with the rest of the nation. And then November 20th of 2020, Tim Walz decided to shut our nation down, or our state down again. So we went from a 50% occupancy. So at that point, everyone was at 50% occupancy across the state. And then on November 20th, he opened up all box stores, all retail, all Home Depot, Menards, and restaurants were closed down 100%. And that went into effect November 20th. It stayed into effect until January 10th. And on December 16th, myself with 10 other business owners, there was supposed to be 200 of us, and 190 of them decided that they were afraid of what was going to happen. And they decided to not open against the unlawful mandates. And 10 of us opened, and I essentially lost 2 restaurants. I had 1 liquor license and food service license taken away from me in 1 restaurant in Lakeville. And then I had 1 in Northfield also, which is about 20 minutes south of my restaurant, which had no affiliation. We were a separate LLC, and my liquor license renewal was denied there also. So at that point, I lost both my restaurants, and we're probably at about $2.2 million in revenue between the 2 of them to nothing. And in 2020, I was able to get another restaurant in the state of Wisconsin on a contract for deed and opened up there. And I commute 2 hours a day. And I've been doing that for 2.5 years.
It seems a little bit insane to me that despite not violating any food service codes, that an American business owner would have their food license stripped from them simply because the government says so, without them providing anything close to a scientific justification to support their decision. In fact, we've now seen internal emails from Walz's chief of staff at the time where he admitted that the COVID case numbers were too small to justify their lockdowns, and that Walz personally wanted to continue them anyway. When you were going through this in 2020, was there any member of government or any official who you could attempt to reason with to make them see what they were doing was blatantly nonsensical or un-American, or were you pretty much on your own?
I was pretty much on my own. You know, I had a lot of support from local politicians and stuff like that. But as far as state level, nobody would listen. And, you know, when we see what happened, you know, the whole entire country shut down, and we all did what we needed to do to flatten the curve. And when they did it again, there was a lot of stuff coming out. So when you were on Facebook, or, you know, the main social media aspects, or on, you know, mainstream media, you didn't see what was really happening. But when you went to, you know, the Rumble or the other off-site ones, we really saw what was happening, and it was no longer about flattening the curve and saving lives. It was, I think, more of a political move. It was more of I don't even know. I guess I don't know why they justified it. Sometimes I laugh and say that Walz's wife must have had an affair with a bartender, but I don't know if that's correct. But that's always been kind of the running joke.
He's a weird guy.
Yeah, because it was just so lopsided, and nobody would really listen. When we got our licenses taken away, the executive order called for the licensing agencies to be able to put restrictions on our license through compliance. Well, January 10th, we, along with the rest of the state, were able to open legally. We followed all the laws and the mandates when they allowed us to open on January 10th. So the executive order restrictions on licensing, even if it was unlawful to do it to begin with, that would have been lifted. And in the end of January, the Minnesota Department of Health refused to issue my food service license and said it was strictly because of what I had done for the mandates. And like you said, the Minnesota Department of Health they restrict your licensing if you violate the 2019 food code in Minnesota. And I had never violated anything. I never had any write-ups. I had never had any critical issues that were not addressed immediately. We had no issues with the health department until that point.
So let me ask you, many people would hear your story and say, why not just move, relocate, make it easier on yourself? Is it a symbolic mental fight for you to not let someone like Tim Walz drive you out of your home? Or is it something else? What is the motivation for you to remain in this lifestyle, commuting all this way across state lines, despite how challenging Walz and the state has made your life to a certain extent?
Well, trust me, if I could live in Wisconsin immediately, I would. Me and my ex fiance owned a house, and we owned a very big house. And because of some of legal stuff, and because I had filed personal bankruptcy the day before my summary judgment with the state of Minnesota, we weren't able to sell the house. We were able to sell it in April, and I got a lease in a place in Minnesota still for another year. And so that lease is up in March 15th of 2022 or 2025. And then I'll be moving to Wisconsin. So it was just, if I never had to come to the state again, I never would. But because of just logistics and financials and everything, there was a lot of different things involved in why I wasn't able to move immediately. But as soon as I can leave this state, I am leaving this state. And if I never have to cross into the state again, I'd be more than happy.
Well, then I'm pulling for you, because when I came across your story, that was one of the first things I thought of. Why would you continue to put yourself through this if you didn't have to? So that makes sense.
Yep.
Now, regarding Tim Walz, you said he isn't what Minnesota is. He isn't who we want in our White House. Now, I don't think that's crazy at all. And in fact, my personal opinion, I think that roughly 75% of the people in this country would agree with you. Yet thanks to the party elites coronating Kamala Harris and her bringing him along, he is the Democrat vice presidential nominee. Now, why do you think the Democrat Party shuns the common sense members of the party like Tulsi Gabbard and now RFK Jr. in favor of putting really anti-American freaks with Chinese ties such as Tim Walz on a pedestal? Is it incompetence, or do they have a genuine hatred for what America stands for?
I was speechless. I was speechless when Tim Walz got the vice president candidacy, honestly. There had been, talks about it for a couple of weeks. And when I saw it, so at my work, we talk politics every single day. Usually in restaurants, you're not allowed to talk politics. But the reason why I'm in that state and the reason why I own that bar is because of politics and what happened. So we talk very freely, and people were saying, is there a chance? And I was I thought it was like not a chance in hell, that there was no chance in hell that he was going to get it. In the morning I found out, I was like, didn't they do their research? I have no idea what they were. I literally, we knew he destroyed our lives. So, I would get hundreds and hundreds of different things about him all the time. So we know who he is and we know what he is. And I hope we're at 75% of the country does not want Tim Walz in the White House. Because I'll tell you what, I don't really know anyone that does. honestly. And I mean, I openly freely talk about politics, but I also respect other people's opinions. It's okay if you're a Democrat. Why? What are your opinions? And, in the problem right now, I think with America is Republicans and Democrats are so far apart that there's no middle ground. And we have to get to that middle ground because we're Americans. We have to become united again because we just aren't. But I think decisions like putting Tim Walz in the White House and Biden, these were decisions that, and even Trump, I mean, I'm a Trump supporter, but he definitely wasn't for uniting America as a whole, because I think it really alienated the two parties. And I think it's continued for 8 years, and now we're coming to another election, and it's scary. To me, this is probably one of the scariest elections our nation has ever seen, because the sides are so divided, and I can't see a middle ground of anyone being happy. I'm glad Kennedy decided to support Trump, because I really think that he might be the middle ground that our country needs at this point. So,
yeah, I think the ideologies are definitely far apart. I'm not quite sure what the number is, though, of each side of the party. Meaning, is it 50-50? Is it 70-30? Is it 60? Is it 2/3 to 1/3? Whatever. But I definitely think you see people, as you just mentioned, RFK, but also Tulsi Gabbard. I think if we don't think about it so much in terms of Republican Democrat versus freedom and common sense versus the other side, I feel a little more optimistic than maybe what you're saying about us coming together. I think this last couple of years has really made people crave common sense, and I'm at least somewhat hopeful that we're getting there. But I do want to ask you one last question before we let you go. Vice presidents typically have little to no impact on a general election outcome, but as you mentioned, Walz does not at all represent what Minnesotans believe in, and based on what you're saying you hear at your business that you own in Wisconsin, it doesn't seem like anybody's really supportive of him. And many polls show President Trump in position to become the first Republican to win Minnesota since Richard Nixon. Do you believe the resistance to Walz can potentially make that a reality based on what you hear from people in your home state?
I'm hoping, but we also have to look 2 years ago, and Governor Walz won again for governor. He won the last governor's race, and I was dumbfounded. And I think that when you look at him winning it maybe necessarily didn't have a lot to do with him. It had a lot to do with who he was running against. And he was running against Scott Jensen, who took a really strong stand on abortion. So I'm hoping that the numbers that we saw in the last gubernatorial election isn't indicative of what our state represents, which is we don't want Walz there, but more people felt stronger about the abortion issue than they did about Tim Walz. And I'm really hoping that being a non-issue right now in this election, that we're going to see the numbers where they really should be.
Well, I want to commend you for putting up a fight. So many people know when things are wrong, but they sit around and do nothing about it, and they let it happen out of fear, which leads to it happening to more people. So I really do admire your spirit. Keep fighting. You have friends here at AMAC who are in your corner. So thank you for joining us today, and God bless you. Thank you.
Thanks very much for having me.
And to all of our listeners out there, be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss any of AMAC's great content. I'm Matt Kane. Until next time.
We are proud to have First Fidelity Reserve as our official bullion and rare coin partner, as they have supported AMAC for over a decade. They are offering our members a free copy of their award-winning Precious Metals Guide to make investing in gold and silver safe and easy for you. Over the past 4 presidential election cycles, gold has trended upward, and this year looks to be the same, as experts estimate gold will gain 25% in 2024. So, don't miss out on $2,500 gold. Call First Fidelity Reserve, 800-336-1630. That's 800-336-1630, and get your free 38-page Precious Metals Guide today.